Hey boys, it's HarmNone. Today I'm going to be going over 10 vehicles that you should not buy in GTA Online. Now there's a lot of vehicles in this game that kind of suck. There's a lot of vehicles that you might not like, but there are definitely some vehicles that just simply don't really serve much of a purpose because of a new vehicle coming out, or B, the vehicle just being generally terrible, but people get tricked into thinking that it's actually good. So in this video, we're going over 10 vehicles that you should not buy in GTA Online, at least according to me. And I'm a pretty humble guy, but in this case, I am 100% correct. So keep that in mind, okay? If you enjoy the video, like is of course appreciated. If not dislike, consider subscribing to my channel if you're new. Let's go ahead and get started with number 10. So at number 10, I've got the Mammoth Patriot Mil-Spec. This thing goes for $1,282,500 if you got the trade price, to $1,710,000 if you don't have the trade price. Now, this was originally released with the Contract DLC back in 2021, and initially, I thought this thing was going to be an awesome vehicle, but unfortunately, as time has gone on, I've realized that the Mammoth Patriot Mil-Spec is probably the worst Amani Tech car in the entire game, if not one of the very worst. Now, the reason that I say that is because of the performance of the vehicle, at least in comparison to a lot of other vehicles at a similar price point. Now, the real issue that I have with the Patriot Mil-Spec is due to the handling, and the off-road performance is quite terrible. And also, even then, the on-road performance is quite bad too. And if you get hit, this thing has a terrible center of gravity that seems like it is super, super high up. And I guess it's kind of realistic, like the Humvees that were used in the Afghanistan war and stuff like that. They started armoring them up a lot, but underneath they were still just a regular truck, you know what I mean? So it definitely feels very top heavy, and that means that going around corners, or if you get hit by another vehicle or anything like that, you're going to have a rough time. And off-road is even worse because of uneven surfaces and things like that. Now, this is a real shame, and I want to get this point across, is that I actually really like the Mammoth Patriot Mil-Spec, at least as far as it looks, and I really just wish that it had a lower center of gravity. That's my one real complaint with it. I was not expecting this thing to be the fastest vehicle on Earth. I was not expecting it to be the best handling, like a supercar or something like that. I just was expecting it to not tip over like crazy and to be kind of good off-road at least. But unfortunately, neither of those things seem to be the case. Now, with that being said, the Patriot Mil-Spec is still pretty cool. It does have the front-mounted machine guns on it and the bullet-resistant windows, as well as the armor plating, the missile lock-on jammer, things like that. But I just simply think it is not worth purchasing when other Amani Tech capable vehicles exist that just outperform this thing in pretty much every way. At number 9, we got the HVY Menacer, or the Heavy Menacer, for $1,775,000. Now, the Menacer is actually a pretty decent vehicle overall, and I actually have recommended it in the past on a few occasions, but you must understand that it is just a worse version of the HVY Insurgent Pickup Custom and the HVY Nightshark. The Menacer has no ground clearance, which is probably the biggest gripe that I have with it. So similar to the Patriot Mil-Spec, it's quite terrible off-road. It'll get caught on rocks and everything like that. But also it has worse armor than both the HVY Nightshark and the Insurgent Pickup Custom. Both of those can take 27 homing missiles, while the HVY Menacer can only take 23. And don't get me wrong, 23 is still a good amount, but it's not as good as the Insurgent Pickup Custom or the Nightshark, of course. Now, the Menacer does get driver-controlled machine guns, which is an improvement over the HVY Insurgent, but the Insurgent Pickup Custom gets access to a proximity mine dropper that you can put behind you, and it does have a top-mounted gun similar to the Menacer. The Nightshark obviously does not have a top-mounted gun, but it does have the front-mounted machine guns. But the front-mounted MGs suck anyways, so there's really no point in getting a Menacer. Now, keep in mind the Nightshark is $1,245,000, and the Insurgent Pickup Custom is a little under $2 million all totaled, if you have the trade price. Now, if you don't have the trade price, it's a little bit higher, but regardless, it is much more worth it. Overall, it's better, faster in a straight line, better off-road, all these things. The Menacer is still cool, and I still would recommend having one eventually. I would just say buy an Insurgent Pickup Custom and a Nightshark before you buy a Menacer for sure. Next up at number 8, we have the P996 Laser. I think this is a pretty obvious one. It goes for $6,500,000, which is almost as much as an F-160 Raiju, which is regarded as generally like the best jet in the game for most applications. Not for dogfighting necessarily, but for pretty much everything else, it smokes almost anything. And that's with the Raiju without the trade price. That's the Raiju at like the full price of $6.8 million, which is insane to think about. And the other thing too to note about the laser is that the cannons got nerfed about a year and a half ago with the release of the San Andreas Mercenaries DLC. So the cannons are not good, and it's still $6.5 million, which is crazy. And there's also nothing you can do to it other than change the color, which is insane. It's insane to think about. And the other real kicker is that you can just go to the military base and steal one. And it's not that hard. You can bribe authorities, or you can just own a hangar in the military base, and then you could get in one and nobody will even care. So buying the laser for $6.5 million is something you should absolutely not do. There's no point in doing it. Please do not buy a laser if you haven't bought one yet. At number 7, we got the Ocelot Stromberg coming in at $1,875,000 to $2.5 million. Now, the reason that the Stromberg is on here is not because it's a bad vehicle. It actually isn't. It's pretty good. But it has been really overshadowed by the Pegasi Toreador or Toreador, depending on how you want to say it. The Stromberg is a submersible land vehicle, so you can drive it on land and then drive it into the water and it will turn into a submarine. Very, very cool. It also has machine guns and it also has missiles, and the machine guns are some of the best damaging in the entire game. The missiles are also quite good. They can even take out Oppressor Mark IIs. They have very decent tracking. But unfortunately for the Stromberg, a couple years ago with the release of the Cayo Perico Heist DLC, they added the Toreador. And the Toreador goes for $4,250,000 now. It used to go for $3,660,000, but it has a rocket booster. It has 4 seats instead of 2 that the Ocelot Stromberg has. It's got similar armor and better missiles, as well as pretty much the exact same machine guns. It's pretty crazy to think about. It is a very, very good vehicle, and unfortunately the Toreador's existence has kind of rendered the Ocelot Stromberg to be a bit of a useless vehicle, at least in terms of comparison. Comparatively, the Stromberg is much worse, but it is still a good vehicle at the end of the day. It's just I wouldn't advise you to buy one, because you should just buy a Toreador instead. It's a much better vehicle. Now, next up at number 6, we got the Declasse Granger 3600LX. Now, this was originally the cheapest Amani Tech vehicle in the entire game, but for some reason, Rockstar did a price increase a little while ago. At the same time, they decided to increase the Toreador's price, for example. They decided to increase the Granger 3600 from like 1.1 mil to 1.5 mil for the trade price, and then from 1.5 mil to 2 mil for the non-trade price, which is crazy, because the Granger 3600 LX, while having armor plating and Amani Tech and all these cool features, front-mounted machine guns, things like that, it's actually slower than the Declasse Granger 3500 that's been in the game since release. That's right, like the SWAT SUV that the new Skies arrive on. Yeah, the Granger 3600 is like the same speed or a little bit slower than the 3500, which is insane to think about. And it got a trade price increase as well as a regular price increase. It's insane. Now, I would not buy the 3600 LX anymore, unless you just want a Chevy like Suburban or Tahoe looking vehicle that you can also put armor plating on and things like that. But if this is going to be your first Amani Tech car, I would definitely steer clear of this and go for something much, much different, because the 3600, you're just getting scammed. Like, your money could go so much further. You could get an Enos Jubilee, which will smoke a Granger 3600 LX, and it's also way faster and has more customization. And it's got the same armor plating and Amani Tech and everything like that. So the Granger 3600 LX is just a very weird vehicle for them to increase the price on. If anything, they should have done the Enos Jubilee, for example, even the Enos Deity, things like that. But yeah, I would absolutely not buy a Granger 3600 LX. Next up at number 5, we have the HVY Barrage, or the Heavy Barrage. It's going to cost you $1,595,000 if you have the trade price, and if you don't, it's going to be $2,121,350. Now, the HVY Barrage can take about 4 RPGs, and it can take somewhere in the neighborhood of like 12 homing missiles, which is a pretty good amount in all honesty. However, when you consider the fact that it's more money than the Night Shark, more money than the Insurgent Pickup Custom, and more money than the Menacer, it starts to really beg the question of why the hell is this thing so expensive, and why would I buy this? And then, if you do buy a Barrage, driving it around, you'll very quickly realize that the wheels have a particular issue that is almost exclusive to this vehicle, I think. I don't think there's any other vehicles in GTA that I've seen that do this, but the wheels will clip into the ground when you're driving around. which will cause the vehicle to be completely unstable, and you'll get almost stuck for like a matter of like a few milliseconds, but it is super, super annoying. You'll see in the gameplay here, I will highlight what I'm talking about with like a little sort of slow-mo, so you can see that the wheel like goes into the ground here. It is so ridiculous and annoying that this vehicle has this, and I really wish that Rockstar would fix it. If Rockstar would go and fix this and reduce the price of the Barrage, I think it would actually be a pretty cool vehicle. But as far as things go right now, I would never buy a Barrage, especially considering the price range that this thing is going to cost you as well. Like, it is just a stupid vehicle for the money. Please do not buy one. Okay, next up at number 4, we've got one that I have mentioned before, and it is buying the Brigade 6x6 before doing the first dose missions, and specifically before doing the first dose missions. I'm not saying don't buy a Brigade 6x6. I'm not saying don't get an acid lab. I'm saying don't buy it for the price of $1,450,000. Now, you will have the option to purchase the Brigade 6x6 from level 1 on Warstock Cash and Carry for $1,450,000. Or it'll say that the trade price is like 750k, but you need to complete the first dose missions first in order to unlock that. Now, what they don't tell you and they do not disclose on the website is that you can buy it for $1,450,000, and you would probably expect that because you have it, you could probably set up the acid lab, right? No, you can't. And I made this mistake on my second character on my Xbox, where I saw that this thing was purchasable without completing the missions, and I really did not feel like doing them again on that character. And then I bought it, and I went to go and set up the acid lab inside of it, and then found out I had to complete the first dose missions anyways, which is ridiculous. Now, for completing those first dose missions, you will save yourself, right around 50% of the total purchase price for the Brigade. So you should absolutely just wait to purchase it and just get it after you've completed the first dose missions. Please do not buy it before. You will not be able to access the acid lab business in the Brigade 6x6 until you've completed those missions. So do them first, unlock the trade price, and then buy it for 750k. It's the only way to go to get the acid lab. Do not buy it for $1,450,000. And I really hope that I've saved some of you guys some money, because I would really like that 700 grand back that I wasted on buying it instead of just doing the missions. So please, consider this for sure. Next up at number 3, we got the Dubachi Champion. Now, this thing has always been overpriced, and then they went and increased the price to $2,995,000 for the trade price and $3,750,000 for the non-trade price. Now, originally it was about 2.3 mil to about 3 mil, but then they went and increased the price on it, and it was already overpriced to begin with. And I think that their thinking was that, well, it's a supercar and it's the only Amani Tech supercar in the game right now, so people will buy it because they'll want the supercar. The thing is that they don't tell you is that the Bravado Buffalo STX is actually a faster vehicle than the Champion, just generally. It has better handling, it has better acceleration, and it has a very similar top speed. And the STX has a lot more customization and 2 more doors and all the same Amani Tech features. The Dubachi Champion got its price point because it was a supercar, and they were hoping that people would just buy it because, well, it's a supercar and you want an Amani Tech supercar, right? It completely sucks. It's not a good vehicle for the money. Now, I'm not saying it's just a generally terrible vehicle. It's just really bad for the money that it costs. It is super overpriced. Do not buy a Dubachi Champion. You are getting completely scammed with this vehicle, unfortunately. Next up at number 2, we have the Buckingham Weaponized Kanata, coming in at $3,385,000. This thing released a little while ago, and it was kind of expected to be like a better version of the Buzzard and the Sparrow, and in fact it's worse than both of them by a lot, because the Buzzard goes for $1,750,000, so this thing is almost double the price, which is crazy to think about. And it has worse machine guns than the Buzzard. It has the same missiles. Now, the one thing it does have going for it is that it is faster. It has a higher airspeed overall, so you can get around a little bit quicker with it. And it does have a little bit of armor as well, but not enough to justify buying it for nearly double the price of the Buzzard. In fact, you could buy a Sparrow and a Buzzard for almost the same price as one of these, which is stupid to think about. The Weaponized Kanata is a complete scam, and I would not recommend buying it in any way, shape, or form. It is buy a Buzzard. buy 2 buzzards instead of buying the weaponized Kanata. It is not worth owning this vehicle. Now for some dishonorable mentions, starting things off strong, you knew it was going to make an appearance. We got the Grotti X80 Proto for $2,700,000. This thing sucks. It has different downforce depending on the direction that you're driving on the map. It has barely any customization, and for 2.7 mil you can get some of the best performing cars in this entire game, or you can get a Grotti X80 Proto that doesn't know which direction it's going and that has different downforce depending on the direction that it's going. It's a stupid car. I don't think it's very good looking. The customization sucks. It's not a fun car to drive. Overall, the Grotti X80 Proto is trash. Do not buy one, please, for the love of God. Now for another dishonorable mention, we got the Bravado Greenwood Cruiser. This thing is on here because it's just so overpriced, and you could honestly extrapolate this to being more than just the Bravado Greenwood Cruiser. It's honestly most of the cop cars. I think really the only ones worth buying are like the Dorado Cruiser and probably the Bravado Gauntlet Interceptor. But the Bravado Greenwood Cruiser is $3,682,500 for the trade price, up to $4,910,000 for the non-trade price. Insane. It's like $500K cheaper than the Bravado Gauntlet Interceptor, and that car is infinitely better in every single way. The Greenwood Cruiser does just generally suck, and I would not buy one. I would not buy many of the new cop cars like the SC Cruiser, the LX Cruiser, even the Vapid Stanier LE Cruisers are really not that good value by today's standards at least. So yeah, that's one I would definitely avoid for sure, is most of the police cars. And of course the last one that we have for a dishonorable mention is the Police Riot for $3,600,000 with the trade price to $4,800,000. This thing is not a personal vehicle, it is a Pegasus vehicle, and that's it. You can also get a 3-star wanted level, and these will spawn, or sorry, maybe it might be a 4-star. I think it's a 4-star. You also do have the option of going to the Vespucci police station, where one will always spawn. There are many different ways to get a police riot that are better than spending over $3.5 mil to just under $5 million to call Pegasus and request it. It doesn't even have bulletproof tires. Don't buy a police riot, for the love of God. Now at number 1, we have the worst purchasing mistake that you can possibly make in GTA Online, and that is the Mule Custom for $95,760. And the price isn't even that egregious for what you're getting, but this vehicle is specifically purchasable for the nightclub business, and it is one of 3 possible delivery vehicles that you can have for your nightclub basement sale missions. However, what Rockstar does not tell you, and what nobody will tell you, is that you can just buy the Pounder Custom, which you can use for any sale missions that require a larger vehicle than the Speedo Custom that you get with the nightclub for free. This renders the Mule Custom to be completely useless, and it is by far the worst of the 3 possible delivery vehicles. But if you don't buy it, and you just buy a Pounder, you don't have to use the Mule Custom at all. And the Mule Custom, if you haven't driven one, is absolutely god-awful. It is terribly slow. The customization is super overpriced on it as well, and generally it just sucks. It's also quite tall and not very wide or anything like that, so it does have a high degree of possibility of tipping over as well. So please, for the love of God, if you have a nightclub, or if you're looking to buy a nightclub, buy one and buy a Pounder Custom for it, and do not ever buy a Mule Custom. And I'm sure many of you guys in the comment section down below will agree with me that this is probably the #1 vehicle purchasing mistake that you can make in GTA Online. The Mule Custom is absolutely terrible, and unfortunately, once you've bought it, you cannot get rid of it. There's no way to get rid of it, which sucks. This is the worst vehicle in GTA Online. It's the worst purchasing mistake you can make, and it is definitely the #1 vehicle that you should never buy in this game. There you have it. Those are 10 vehicles, or a few more honestly, that you should never buy in GTA Online. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I really hope that I have maybe saved you some money. I really hope you guys haven't made some of these purchasing mistakes. You know, if you bought a Patriot Mil-Spec or a Menacer or like a Stromberg or whatever, it's no biggie, you know what I mean? But the Mule Custom, the Brigade 6x6 before doing the first Dose missions, some of the cop cars, the Grotti X80 Proto, Weaponized Kanata, Champion, all those are pretty bad mistakes to make, and I just really hope that I can save you from making them, because I wish that I did not buy some of these vehicles, that's for sure. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, if you learned something, a like is of course appreciated. If not, dislike. Do consider subscribing to my channel if you guys are new, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care. Peace.